I'm Deborah Mause Ajemfra. I stress on the Mause because Mause is a common error name, but Mause is spelled differently and it means something different. I'm the Deputy Director General Legal for the Securities and Exchange Commission. I was called to the Bar of England and Wales in 2000 and called to the Ghana Bar in 2001. I'm married with 3 amazing children, including a set of twins. Given an overview of the responsibilities of the SEC, I would use the Securities Industry Act, Act 929, 2016, that's when that act was passed. And that act gives the SEC a mandate of market development and investor protection. So within the mandate of the SEC, what the Deputy Director General Legal does is that apart from supporting the Director General in implementing the strategy, the Deputy Director General Legal has responsibility for a number of departments. First is the Legal and Enforcement Department. Second, Human Resource and Administration. Third, exchanges and markets, which includes the stock exchange and the commodities market. And fourthly, the policy research and information technology department. So these are the 4 departments that the Deputy Director General Legal at the SEC is responsible for. It's very interesting in the sense that when you hear the title Deputy Director General Legal, you think the only role that this person performs is legal. But then I have learned that there's so much more to the role than legal. So at the SEC, there's a Deputy Director General for Finance, who is the second Deputy Director General, and he also has responsibilities for other departments within the SEC. So the 2 of us work effectively to support the Director General. So the SEC as a regulator, we work with laws and we pass laws and then new things come up, new developments come up. So I think one of the challenges we face is the fact that financial services are quickly evolving. Every day there's a new trend that is linked to financial services and the regulator is not able to keep up with these new trends. So I think the difference between how fast things move in the financial space compared to the regulator trying to catch up to provide the necessary laws to address these new trends and also have the know-how, because you can only supervise what you understand. So that balance is what is challenging for us at the SEC. So as the SEC, what have we changed in order to accommodate these new trends, as I said, like cryptocurrency and digital assets? What we have done is that we admit that we don't understand the space. So we've set up a team that is actually reviewing how these cryptocurrency and digital assets are being used in other countries. And fortunately for the SEC, we are signatory A of the International Organization of Securities Commissions, which is the international body that oversees securities commissions across the globe. And they have best practices, which they have shared with us. So we have a team with us that is looking at the best practices elsewhere, because as they say, there's nothing new under the sun. Before you get there, somebody else has done it. So there's no need reinventing the wheel. So we look at the international best practices. Then we've been very fortunate to have organizations that are already doing crypto and digital assets who have come to explain what they do to us. So now we've got that balance, the regulator side and the market operator side. And with that information, we can come up with our own guidelines to be able to regulate this space. For now, we haven't come out with any guidelines yet on this space. think the biggest challenge the SEC has is the fact that the investor themselves don't understand some of these products. So we say that a well-informed investor is a well-protected investor. So the lack of understanding of the products by the investor is one big challenge, because for us to be able to assist an investor, they'll have to explain what they've invested into us. And sometimes you find out that it is not an SEC regulated entity. I think the proliferation of Ponzi schemes is also a big challenge to us, because people can't differentiate between what is regulated and what is not regulated. So I think the unregulated space has become a very big challenge to the regulated space, and it requires a lot of investor education for people to be able to understand the difference between the two. And I think once people understand the difference, you get whistleblowers from the investors themselves coming to say that we found out that this product here, and we think that by looking at ABCD, it is likely to be a Ponzi scheme. So can you go out there and investigate them? And I think if we get more of that information, it will help us. So the SEC in trying to protect investors has put people in different categories. We realize that our stakeholders are a broad range of people, and how can we educate each group, because we can't do this alone. We need a lot of people to help us. So we put them into different categories, and we have been training these different groups. So we did the journalists first of all, because we realized that there are so many TV and radio stations that carry out adverts of things that put investors in a very difficult situation. So we did training of journalists and media houses on what the SEC regulates and what is considered as a Ponzi scheme. Then we went to another group, which is the judges, because we realized that for us to get our actions enforced by the courts, the judges have to understand what we do at the SEC. So we did the judges. Another group that we've engaged in has been students, because that's a group that is very much involved in this space. So we are doing different categories of people, and we've named that time with the SEC. And in addition to looking at these groups, we are also doing across the regions. So we've done time with the SEC in Takoradi. We've done time with the SEC in Tamale, where they bring all the main stakeholders in the region to come and listen to us. So we believe that with investor education, people become more well-informed and more protected against these schemes. Financial institutions in Ghana compliance, their compliance level is a very broad topic, because as you know, in Ghana, we have 4 different financial sector regulators. So we have the MPRA, which regulates the pension space. We have Bank of Ghana that regulates the banks. We have the NIC, the National Insurance Commission, that regulates insurance companies, and the Securities and Exchange Commission that regulates investment houses, stock exchanges. So the financial sector space is very broad. So for you to get a rating of this space, I think the best institution to give that will be the Financial Stability Council, because the Financial Stability Council is where all these 4 regulators meet to have an oversight of the broad space. But I would say that for the SEC, we have tried to do our best for our space. And we realized that corporate governance was a big challenge. During the financial sector cleanup, we noticed that people were directors and they didn't even understand what they were doing. So what we have done is to issue guidelines. So we've issued corporate governance guidelines for listed companies. So for companies listed on the stock market, we have given them some guidelines on how to conduct their corporate governance. Then for the companies that are not listed on the stock exchange, we've issued a conduct of business guideline. So we tell you what to do and how to run the business in the best way. But we do note that just issuing guidelines doesn't solve the problem. So on a yearly basis, we conduct training for the key management personnel and their board of directors on corporate governance, and the participation has been really good, and we are seeing the results of it. Because in the past, people used to say the easiest sector to enter in the financial space is the SEC side, but now people are running away from being appointed as board of directors on the SEC side because they've come to understand that the requirements are very high and the regulator is going to make sure that the right thing is done. So I think we have come a very long way on that. Fintech is very important. I think technology has come to stay and will continue to evolve, especially with the market activities. And I say that the SEC is a very unique financial sector regulator because we have over 21 different entities that we regulate. So from fund management companies to broker-dealers to stock exchanges to commodity exchanges, private equity, all these entities are regulated by us. So how do we keep up with this? So the SEC in 2018 issued a regulatory sandbox guideline. And this sandbox guideline is to give fintechs who want to come into our space an opportunity to test their systems. So they go through the regulatory sandbox, test their systems, we give them support, and if at the end of the testing period they feel that they are indeed capable of working within our space, then they come for the relevant license to be able to operate. So I'll use an example. We had a crowdfunding entity that was in our sandbox called Grow For Me, and they were doing crowdfunding in the agri sector with technology. So what they did was to go through the regulatory sandbox period whilst waiting for us to issue the relevant guidelines for their processes. And when we finally issued the crowdfunding guidelines, Grow For Me is now a crowdfunding licensee with the SEC. So we give people that space, understanding what fintech is, to go through the incubation sort of period in the regulatory sandbox phase. And when we test all the processes and they are confident, the regulator is also pleased at where they are, then they move into the licensee portion that they want to be part of. So that's how we've been addressing the fintech issues in our space. So investor education is very important, and the SEC does not think it can do this on its own. So the Ministry of Finance has had a major financial sector education campaign that has involved all the financial sector regulators, because we realize that some of the Ponzi schemes, they use similar approaches. So they're in the insurance space, they're in the banking space, they're in the pension space, they're in the investment space. So a concerted approach seemed to be a good idea than each regulator doing their own thing. So Ministry of Finance spearheaded a collaborated effort by all the regulatory bodies, and that was good. In addition to that, the SEC, as I said, has its own investor education program, which we have put in different segments and have also put in different regions. The next region we want to go to is Ho is the next, Volta region, capital Ho is the next town we want to go to. So that is also ongoing. And we've also broken down our information into short segments. So we have short videos, animation, social media handles that break down some of the most complex processes into very simple things that you can understand. And we have a helpline that people can call if they want explanations to some of these things. So we are trying to make sure that the information is out there. And in addition to all these things we do, we have decided to color code our entities because we believe that some people may not have the opportunity to come and ask us questions. The only place they will go to be our website, which is www.sec.gov.gh. And then all our licensees are on the website. So if there's a licensee that we have an issue with, that licensee will be color coded in red. So that's a way of us telling the investors that this entity, we have challenges with them and we're in the process of resolving them. So it's for the investor to say, even though it's red, I probably still want to do business with them. But for some people, the red is a good direction that they have. And apart from these things, we also have our annual report that we publish. That's very informative. It gives a broad view of what we do. We have quarterly newsletters as well that we issue. So our information is out there for the use of academics, for students, for policymakers, and for all the investing public and what they want to use the information for. I think there are different categories that can be used by anybody for the purposes that they want. So we've tried hard to put information out there, but we still know there are gaps. If there are still gaps, we want people to still ask us to fill those gaps. We are ready to fill the gaps. I think for us at the SEC, we would want people to, we know it's very difficult to save. We know it's a big sacrifice people do when they save their money. And we think that people should be very careful. I think some of the rates that are being given by these schemes are ridiculous. I mean, once you hear the rate, you should beware. And then when you fall into trouble, you should know that the higher the risk, the higher the return. And if you want your investment to grow, you have to be careful. Use some guides, basic guides, like what's the treasury bill rate? If the treasury bill rate is, let's say, 22, why is somebody offering me 35? What are they doing with the money? When am I going to get that money back? And I think our companies also should get to a point of thinking about listing. So many of our companies just want to do me, my wife, my children. But people have to understand the advantages of listing on the stock exchange and getting other people to get involved, put in some money. And it's patient capital. If somebody puts in some equity into your business, be a bit patient. And that's another option to raise capital for your business to grow. So we think people should look at the options under the SEC and they should find something that is suitable for them. I think when I was contacted by Lydian Esuman, who heads Vents and Alethea on this project, I thought it was a very good thing. And I think the decision to make people out there know what the regulators are doing is a good one. The taxpayers' money is being used to pay us. So if the information about what we do is going out, I think it's in the right direction. And for a private firm to take on such a responsibility is something that should be applauded and acknowledged by all. Thank you very much, Bent and Alethea, for taking on such a big task that everybody needs.